Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to have you with us today for another in a series of Enrich Virtual Wednesdays, senior center programs that are delivered safely and conveniently for you, as well as intentionally designed to enrich your life. And we really mean that. Welcome. Today's program is number 7 of 24 that are scheduled for this year, 2021. I'm John Wassam. In addition to being your host today, I also serve the Enrich Senior Center of South Fort Myers as the project manager and wingman for our staff person, life enrichment coordinator, Dina Kilgus. So I'd like to give you some guidance today that will help this go well for you. Likely all of you are going to be watching this program on demand after the fact. We understand that, and we're happy that you're taking advantage of the program on demand, and you'll share it with many other people to benefit from it as well. So because you're watching this on demand, I have a favor to ask of you. If you either right now or as soon as this program ends, if you would please send by email your first and last name and your preferred email address and the name of this program to Dina Kilgus. That's Dina, D-E-N-A, at enrichseniorcenter.com. That's the lady who just appeared on the screen with us. Welcome, Dina. If you happen to be with us by telephone today, for this live broadcast, then would you do me a favor and please text your first and last name and your preferred email address to 423-747-3030. Again, that mobile number is 423-747-3030. Now, we're asking for this information for 3 reasons. First of all, if our presenter has any information that she would like to pass along to you to enhance what you learn from watching the program, and I know that today she does, we will be able to email that information directly to you. Secondly, we'll send you a simple survey so you can give us feedback on today's program to help us continuously improve. And thirdly, we'd like to be able to periodically send you information on future in-person and virtual Enrich programs. So enough housekeeping for today. Let's get on to the primary focus and topic of this morning. Annalee, welcome and thank you for investing in us. Annalee is the founder and president of Care Right Incorporated, based in Bonita Springs, Florida. The link to her business is on the Enrich website in conjunction with the description of today's program. In addition, Annalee serves the Enrich Senior Center as a member of our WISE Council team, made up of about a dozen leaders of various organizations that are serving senior adults well here in our region. So Annalee, as you begin your presentation today, I would especially be appreciative if you'd share a bit of your own life journey that has led you to be as passionate as you are and as experienced as you have become at helping others create something that I doubt many people have ever thought about, but it makes total sense: creating an aging plan. Annalee, thank you for being here. Take it away.
Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. Hope you're doing great today. Thank you again for asking me to be a part of the Enrich program. I wanted to share a few of my whys, why I am where I am today. I feel like that is helpful information when you get to know someone and kind of what makes them tick and why they do what they do and what they're called to do. I knew when I was 9 years old that I was going to be a social worker working with aging families and their parents, right? So I knew at age 9, I was in 3rd grade, and here's how I knew. So my grandparents moved in with us. My mother's mom and my father's dad were both widows, and they moved into our farmhouse. We're farmers from Iowa, so we had this like big old farmhouse, right? So my grandparents, because they were both widows and starting to fail, This was back in the 70s and early 80s. And we were able to keep them at home with us by taking care of them, meaning we were able to keep them out of the nursing homes, which is where they would have gone because we didn't have assisted living centers back then. We were their assisted living. So when I was 9, when I was in 3rd grade, my oldest sister actually either ran away or got abducted in college. And my parents had already committed to taking care of my grandparents. But every weekend they were driving to Nebraska to try to find my oldest sister. And I saw firsthand how in our family, when we say that we're going to do something, we do it. We commit to what we say we're going to do. We have integrity like that. And so it was very difficult to still be able to continue that promise of taking care of grandmother and taking care of my grandfather while we're every weekend, mom and dad are trying to go to Nebraska to find my sister. So that went on for about a year and a half of, and all of us younger kids needed to, of course, we're farm kids, so you always step up to the plate to take care of the animals and take care of the farm, but also to take care of the family. So I've been a caregiver since I was very young. And my grandmother's aging process and her aging journey was very different than my father's father. My grandmother was in a lot of pain, osteoporosis, so her like spine was all like bent over. She had depression because she was in so much pain. Back then, we didn't have pain clinics like we do now. And also back then, seniors were too afraid to take pain pills because they didn't want to get addicted, right? It was like a big thing back then. So anyway, and then my grandfather, my dad's dad, he was like really fun and young and vibrant. He just needed some supervision because of his eyes. So he would ride horses with us. He would plow. He'd jump up in the combine with us. And he was like our little farm buddy. So it's like a very different experience. His aging journey was very different. So I knew when I was 9, God called me to be a social worker, and it never veered. I never veered from that path since then. And so fast forward, obviously I have a calling to work with elderly people. I got my social work degree and I started working as a social worker in long-term care centers right out of college. Before that, I was a candy striper and all that kind of stuff that they don't have anymore. But back then I was volunteering in nursing homes and I just loved it. So I got my social work degree and started working in long-term care centers. Eventually, through the course of an 18-year career as social worker, executive director, corporate trainer, I worked my way up. But every part of my job that I had in long-term care was still providing tours to families. So they would come in to the facility, whether it's assisted living, memory care, or the nursing home or skilled rehab. The families would come in, they were blindsided by a medical crisis with their parents. Mom's in the hospital, she fell, she broke her hip. She's the caregiver to dad with dementia. The hospital says that they're discharging mom, and they gave this whole list of facilities to go find a place for her to go by noon tomorrow because we're discharging. And that's exactly how it unfolds every single time. And so 18 years of baseline data to know that families are not having a conversation. You know, when I would do the tour, that would take about an hour, but I was spending 2 and 3 hours at a time with each family because they had no idea if mom or dad had a living will, power of attorney, what's their code status, what's their end of life wishes. They didn't know if they had long-term care insurance, if they were a veteran. They had no idea about anything. So that was like the bulk of families, but there were this teeny tiny little few families that would get frustrated because they said, you know, Annalee, we saw the writing on the wall with mom and dad. We could tell things weren't going well. Mom's been losing weight. Dad's dementia is worse. He's starting to fall. You know, the kids saw things happening and tried to be proactive with having some of these family conversations about the what ifs, or what do we do when your condition continues to get worse. But they got so much pushback from their siblings or from their parents that they quit trying to have these conversations with them. And they just kind of felt helpless and hopeless, thinking, oh, well, we have to just wait until there's another crisis. And then that's going to make the decision for mom or dad. well, there's no reason to have to feel like you have to wait. So in 2011, I started my own company. I started Care Right Incorporated, and I work with families across the country. I've been virtual, first using Skype, but now Zoom, because Zoom wasn't available back then. So I've been virtual since 2012, working with families across the country in developing aging plans via having a family meeting. So when I first started as a social worker, now almost 30 years ago, I could easily go to Ethel and Marvin's house and sit at the kitchen table, and the kids could easily gather around the kitchen table and we could talk. What's working well? What's not working well? What are your goals as you age? What are your financial resources to be able to accomplish those goals? Like, how did you plan? If your goal is to stay at home, great. How did you financially plan for that? What kind of long-term care insurance do you have? What do you have financially to pay for that? But also, what are your end of life wishes? If your heart stops and you're no longer breathing, do you want to be resuscitated, or do you want to just let go in peace? So we have all of these conversations. And what's the plan if you're not able to stay at home and you want to stay at home, but we also know that assisted living centers are full of people who also wanted to stay at home. So back then I was able to have all those types of family meetings and develop the aging plan in person with the kids around the kitchen table. But as most of us know, families aren't like that anymore. And when families started moving away from each other, it's sad, but if they didn't invest the time, the effort, the energy, and the resources in maintaining relationships with each other, then their relationships start to drift away. And when mom and dad have a medical crisis, then the siblings have to get reacquainted as siblings and say, okay, now what do we do with mom and dad? Unfortunately, again, because company culture is what it is, a lot of these family members might only have 2 or 4 weeks of vacation, and that's not enough time to be able to dedicate to go and see mom and dad if they have to take a flight. A lot of my daughters that call me, they're tending to up to 6 aging loved ones, their parents, their step parents, their in-laws who they may or may not have liked in the first place. Right. And then, a lot of us have that, stray aunt or uncle that either outlived their kids or they never got married. And they're like, hey, Annalee does such a great job taking care of all these other elderly people. Let's just throw Aunt Mary on her plate too. And I'm like, whoa, this isn't Thanksgiving. There's not always room for one more. And why is that? Because caregiving to aging loved ones, even one person, the average caregiver spends 22.4 hours a week out of their own time, taking off work to become a family caregiver. We know that 58% of families end up thrust in the role of caregiving without ever having a family meeting. We know that 48% of adult children are paying for their aging loved one's care in some way, whether they're paying the home care, they're paying the cell phone bill, the lifeline bill, electric, they're paying out of their own pocket to be able to help support their aging parents. So these are all the reasons why I built my business, to help families really understand and explore what their options are based on what their resources are. So without further ado, because I can talk all day long about this type of stuff, but let me pull up my PowerPoint so that we stay on track there. All right, I'm going to share my screen, so just give me 1 second and let's pray that this works like it just did minutes ago. Okay, so I'm assuming that you can see what I can see. Yep, good. All right. So we're going to talk about, now that you have my history. Oh, and there's one more thing. Jeez. Well, when you're almost 50, you have a lot of life experience. I almost forgot. John, I think the story that you're probably talking about too in the beginning was my bus accident.
Yes.
So you're like, yeah, that's the one. I didn't know about all this other stuff. So I built Care Right in 2011 to help families across the country develop an aging plan. in 2012. And I'm also an international speaker on aging issues and crisis management and dementia and how to communicate better with your loved ones who have memory impairment. So I had just returned from Shenzhen and Beijing, China, made it through this third world country relatively unscathed on my own. Do not drink the water there, just a heads up. And so then 4 days later, I come back to the States. I'm in Chicago for a couple of days on a speaking tour. Then I'm in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And this is 4 days after my 40th birthday. So I'm walking across the street. I was walking with a little 82-year-old gentleman named John, who was telling me about his health issues. And so we're talking as we're walking across the street. So we're pedestrians in the crosswalk. All of a sudden he yells, "Watch out." And the next thing I know, I'm getting up off the street and I'm like, what the heck? What happened here? So I'm looking around and I'm just like, nothing is making sense. So I look up and the school bus is parked crooked, or as we in Iowa say, kitty wampus, is parked crooked across the street. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I think I just got hit by a school bus. And so then, of course, because this is over the noon hour in Sheboygan, all these people, like 15, literally 15 people, run out of the stores and out of the diners and all that kind of stuff, because we still have diners in Wisconsin. So all these people are running out and they're like, oh my gosh, you just got hit by a school bus and you flew 15 feet. And I'm like, oh, that explains a lot. And so my point is that getting hit by a school bus was not what I had in mind for my day or my life. And so we know that the people that had strokes didn't wake up that morning and think, oh, I think I'm going to have a stroke today, right? So it's so important that everyone have a plan. I don't care if you're 30 years old or if you're 60 or 90 years old. We all have to have an aging plan. I practice what I preach. So I carry my living will. I carry my healthcare power of attorney. I carry my list of, well, I don't have family. I have my brother and my sister. So it's a short list, but I carry their names and their phone numbers because they are the emergency contacts in case something happens to me. And I carry that. And my saving grace was that my purse that day was a backpack. And I carry way too much crap. But that's what saved me from hitting my head on the street. And the ER doctor said that. He said, your backpack saved your life. And so when I got up off the street and I'm kind of dusting myself off and just kind of taking an inventory of like, okay, what are my injuries? Because I work in healthcare, I'm like doing my own little neuro checks to make sure, see if I have like a brain bleed. I'm doing my own little memory exam. And when these people started coming out to the street to like make sure I was okay, because I've spent a lot of time in ICU units with my clients, I know what quality of life means to me. That's why I carry my living will. So I gave every one of those witnesses something little to remember just in case I lost consciousness. So I'm like, my name is Annalee Kruger. Here's my birthday. I'm allergic to penicillin. I'm a do not resuscitate. So I gave everyone something to remember because in case I lost consciousness, I wanted someone to be able to speak for me and advocate for me. And I was literally pulling my do not resuscitate and my living will I was pulling my packet that I carry with me with my DNR, my advanced directives. I carry that with me and I'm literally pulling it out when the ambulance comes and I'm like, here, don't hook me up to stuff. And she's like, oh, I wish everyone carried this with them because it makes the paramedics' life a lot easier and the ER team's life a lot easier if they already know what your wishes are when you get there. So those are some significant life events that have formed me to be the person that I am today and why I do what I do. So today we're going to talk about what is an aging plan and how do we create one if you want to try to do this on your own. So creating an aging plan as a key to thriving. If you want to be successful and have, when I say successful, if you want to have quality of life, if these things are important to you, quality of life, quality of care, and family relationships, and having the healthiest aging journey that you can, you have to put a plan in place. It's okay to be willy-nilly about some things in life, but certainly not our aging years when we're the most vulnerable and the most dependent on others for our needs. So I'm going to just jump into aging. Now, many of you on this webinar probably are in the aging journey. We all are. I am too, because I'm one day older today than I was yesterday. But understanding the aging process, it is bumpy. We have, our medical conditions can change quickly. We have medical crises, a fall. You didn't wake up this morning and think I'm going to have a fall today and hit my head on my nightstand. But guess what? Thousands of people did that this morning. So your life can change within a heartbeat. My life changed within a heartbeat many times when we got the phone call that my sister's missing, when my parents got the phone call that I got hit by the school bus. When I got hit by the school bus, my life changed within one heartbeat. And that's what life is, and it's bumpy. So we have sudden health changes. We end up in the hospital. Diseases or dementias progress. And it can be very bumpy for not only the person that is afflicted with those conditions, but certainly the family as well. We know that falls happen. We know that there's concerns with someone being safe at home. And that could be a lot of different things. Like when I go into people's homes, there's usually at least 5 to 10 fall risks that I see just by looking around, whether it's light bulbs burned out, too much clutter, extension cords. A big thing too is if they have carpet, or if you have carpet and there's bubbles in the carpet because it needs to be stretched again, that causes a lot of falls. Or just different layers of different steps in your house as well can make people fall. We know that flight risks with persons with dementia, we call those silver alerts. Florida, if you're in Florida, we just had 2 in one day last week. So silver alerts is when someone with memory impairment or some mental impairment is lost. And so those can trigger a lot of crises for families. Caregiver issues, caregiver fatigue, whether you live near or far. If you're the spouse of someone who has a broken hip and you're the caregiver, that's one thing, because in 3 to 4 weeks that your caregiving role is going to lessen. But if you're a caregiver to someone with memory impairment, like dementia or Parkinson's disease or cancer, that this is going to be a journey that's going to end up being a full-time job as that disease progresses. COVID has obviously added a layer of complexity for everyone's life. Families were already overwhelmed about what to do with their aging parents before COVID, but COVID has skyrocketed families' fear levels, their concern for their aging parents, and it's also changed their thoughts about their care options. Before COVID, it was pretty commonplace that because by the time families or daughters call me because they're burned out, their first thought was always, let's just move mom into assisted living, because the daughters are burned out. But because of COVID, there's a lot of fear about, let's not put mom or dad into a facility, because once COVID seems to get in these buildings, it goes like rock. It just goes like rapid fire. So COVID has really made a lot of families kind of step back and say, what are we going to do with mom and dad? There's flight restrictions, back when COVID was like first here, flight restrictions. You couldn't get in to see your loved one in the hospitals. Just last Friday, facilities opened up again for tours and for letting families come in that want to see their loved ones. So COVID has put a lot of consideration into what should we do as a family to help mom and dad be safe. And in family dynamics, I'm here to tell you that 85% of my clients that come to me, by the time they get referred to me or find me, their relationships as a family are pretty dysfunctional. And the most of the reason is because of family caregiving. They're burned out. They don't know how to communicate effectively and productively as a family. And so by the time they come to me, their relationships are very strained all across the board. One would hope that the aging process would bring families together, but I am here to tell you that it often does not. Why? Because everyone has their own relationship with each other, and those relationships change throughout the course of our lives, right? So you might have been closer to your sister 30 years ago, but now you're closer to your brother, or you might have been the son that was the closest to your dad, but now for whatever reason, your relationship with your dad has changed and now you're closer to your mom. So relationships change through the course of time. Everyone has their own perception of money or finances and how their inheritance should be spent. Everyone has their own idea about what mom or dad really needs, as far as their care needs and how to keep them at home or moving into a care community. And a lot of denial about how things are really going with their aging loved ones. If you're at home, you might have some concerns about how you're doing. Most concerns that my clients share with me that are still living at home is, and this was even before COVID, but the house just gets too big and overwhelming, and you're like, oh, the shingles need to be redone, or the carpet needs to be stretched, or the toilet doesn't flush consistently. So the home ends up getting to be pretty overwhelming by itself. And then you have your health issues on top of that. You might end up finding that you're in your chair most of the day watching TV. You're not getting enough socialization, so you start to get depressed or anxious, and your memory starts to slip because you're not adequately socialized and stimulated. Or you're not drinking enough water, because if you have to drink, then you have to get up and go to the bathroom. And if you have shortness of breath or pain or discomfort or dizziness, then in my experience, seniors tend to just kind of sit down and stay put all day, and they're not eating properly or drinking and hydrating or taking medications properly. So if you're in that boat, we really need to make sure that you have enough supports in place to help keep you safe. When I ask my clients are the whole family, but when I ask the moms and the dads, the Ethels and the Marvins, what are your goals as you age? The two consistent ones in almost 30 years is that they want to stay at home as long as possible. The second goal that comes out of their mouth right after that one, literally right after that one, is that they do not want to become a burden on their kids. So those two are not necessarily mutually exclusive, because guess who calls Annalee to put an aging plan in place? It's the adult kids, because they are burned out. So when we talk about aging in place, I just want to, if you're on this webinar and you're someone who's like, oh, I want to age in place at home. Most of us do, right? Because that's where our stuff is, and that's where we're comfortable, and we have our privacy, and we have some independence at home in some ways. It's not as romantic and viable as seniors would like to think, though. I talked about some of the issues already, with the house getting to be too big, and too overwhelming, or the upkeep of the house or the upkeep of the car. Can get very overwhelming very quickly. Home care issues. It is very difficult to find quality and properly trained caregivers who have critical thinking skills. And there's no actual oversight from management, because they can't. They send the caregivers out to the house and just kind of hope for the best. They have people that will come out once a month or call you to make sure that you're doing all right or that you like the caregiver. But in a facility, like in a healthcare center, there's a floor nurse that supervises and can see what's going on. But in a home care situation, it's you and your companion. So home care companies do strive very much to ensure that your companion is a good fit for you. But again, it's just the way that it's set up. There's not going to be a supervisor that's making sure that they're doing the right thing for you. There's issues with no-shows or people who call in for their shift. And a lot of them are on their cell phones, and there's language barriers. So these are the complaints that I get from my clients who have decided that they want to stay at home. They feel like they have to train the caregivers, or if you're the spouse and you bring the caregiver or the companion in so that you can get a break, the spouse still feels like they have to be there to train the caregiver and want to make sure that they can trust the companion before they leave to go shopping. Cost. Let's talk about cost. People want to age in place at home. One of the reasons they think that they want to do that is because they think that Medicare is going to pay for that. A lot of seniors, a lot of families in general, think that Medicare just pays for everything, and that's simply not true. And if you're making a plan or wanting to do things based on wrong information, you're going to jeopardize your care options down the road. So cost, I have clients that are paying, home care is $25 to $28 an hour because it's hard to find quality caregivers. Most home care, if not all, home care companies have a 3 or 4 hour shift minimum. So you can't call them and say, I just need Nancy to come twice, for 2 hours. They don't do that anymore. So it's just very hard to find good quality employees. So home care companies now require a 3 to 4 hour shift minimum, or a minimum of 21 or 28 hours per week. They want a commitment out of you before they'll say, yes, we'll take your case. If you decide, or if the time comes that you need long-term, like live-in care or full-time care 24/7, I have clients that are paying $8,500 minimum, and that's just for the companion to be with you. $8,500 a month for live-in care, and that's the minimum. I have other clients that are paying $11,000 and $12,000 a month. And I have clients that are paying $20,000 a month, because if you have mom and dad, or you and your husband both need care, you don't get to share the caregiver. You both need your caregiver. Or if you're like my dad, he's 6'4", 230 pounds. One caregiver, these caregivers are pretty small in nature usually. They're not football players. So if my dad wanted to stay at home and he wasn't able to get around and transfer very well by himself, the home care company would say, yeah, we can keep your dad at home. But to do that, we need 2 companions for their safety and his safety too. So then that just doubles the price, because it's not like McDonald's a twofer. Okay, so lack of mobility, socialization, and mental engagement, TV becomes your activity. And that's one of the things that we're trying to prevent with our programming to you, is bringing the outside world to you, especially during COVID when you can't get out very much. And so that's one of the things we're trying to do for you, is bring the outside world and activities and socialization and intellectual stimulation to you. But when you're aging at home, it's very easy to just keep the TV as your socialization, and that's not adequate. Loneliness, depression, and anxiety start to set in if you don't have enough supports and oversight to prevent things from happening. If you're a recent widow, in my experience, the remaining spouse may not want to be at home anymore, or maybe dad always took care of the bills and mom took care of the washing and the laundry and housekeeping, and these spouses sometimes they weren't like cross-trained each other. So I've got husbands that they've never touched the dishwasher, they've never touched the washing machine, they have no idea how to run any of it. I have surviving spouses or surviving wives that haven't written a check out for 65 years, and they have no idea how to do bill pay. So these are really big considerations that a lot of people fail to think about. And now we have COVID issues, so aging in place, a lot of my clients were torn because they're like, well, we don't want to bring home care in because then they might contaminate us. Well, and with home care, a lot of the staff were concerned about you contaminating them and their family. So COVID has definitely put a huge wrinkle into what people would normally consider doing to age in place at home. So caregiver crisis. Caregivers are leaving the workforce in droves to become caregivers. And when I'm saying caregiver, I'm talking about your adult children. Your sons and your daughters are leaving the workforce in droves because they feel like they have to be a caregiver to their aging parents. Caregivers are financing their loved ones' care. I already talked about this at the top of the webinar just a little bit. I'm just going to go through a couple of these. In 2018, Genworth did a study. There's starting to be more and more studies coming out now. It's kind of like the world woke up and was like, oh, we have an aging crisis out here. And I'm like, no kidding. I've only been talking about this for almost 30 years. So Genworth did a study. 46% of family caregivers had to work fewer hours. So what that means is when you have doctor's appointments and you can't go to those by yourself, if you don't have a companion or a professional advocate, like what I do with my company, then that means someone needs to go with you. And so if that means it's an adult child, 46% of those family caregivers had to work fewer hours. If you have doctor's appointments, they're not at work, right? So 30% of family caregivers missed career opportunities. 63% of family caregivers are paying for their loved ones' care out of their own funds. 42% of family caregivers, these are sons and daughters, reduce their own contributions to their savings and retirement account because they're losing hours at work, they're not taking the job promotion, and they're helping fund their elderly loved ones' care or lifestyle. I talked about this already. 58% of adult children find themselves thrust into the role of caregiving without ever having a family meeting or discussion. And then we wonder why resentment starts to settle in because they're uprooting their lives to help their parents. And in most of these cases, the adult children are your assisted living. So you're staying at home because your adult children are helping you provide for that. Why Alzheimer's and dementia matter. You can get more information off of the alzheimer's.als.org website, but more than 5 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's or dementia. By 2050, they're projecting nearly 14 million people will be affected by the disease. In 2020, healthcare costs to the nation were $305 billion. By 2050, they're projecting 1.1 trillion costs to the nation. 16 million Americans provide unpaid care. That's again where there's a problem with adult children not taking their job promotions or quitting their jobs or taking early retirement to become a caregiver to their aging parents. And there's over 16 million Americans, adult children that are doing that, or spouses that are doing that. Caregivers provided an estimated 18.6 billion hours of care, valued at nearly $244 billion. And caregiving to a person with dementia will be 24/7 as the disease progresses. The emotional, physical, and financial aspects of caregiving can get very overwhelming very quickly. One thing that when families tell me, well, if dad's dementia progresses, that tells me that they don't understand the disease at all. So that's why most of my clients, I do dementia training and dementia coaching so that they actually understand what their loved one has. Hospital discharges, let's talk about that. Aging 2.0 did a study. That's an amazing website, by the way, the aging website. 48% of seniors that were discharged from hospitals do not follow through with their discharge instructions. Why? Because you're still recovering, you're tired, you're weak, you have mobility issues. It's hard to get around. If you just had leg surgery, it's hard to get around. You might have transportation issues. We know that in our area, there's a lack of enough or adequate transportation. Multiple follow-up appointments can get confusing and overwhelming. Medication changes can be confusing. You might not have enough support in place to make sure that the care needs are addressed and followed through. And again, a lot of family denial. A lot of adult children think that their parents are more able to handle their affairs than they really are. And especially after you come out of the hospital, you're just not up to par yet. So even if you could manage all of this relatively well before the hospitalization, we know that seniors are at risk, especially after a hospitalization. So think about, what conversations have you had with your family about the what ifs? What are your goals as you age? This is the aging plan. This is the meat of the aging plan. What are your goals as you age? Really stop and think about that. Who will provide your care? Are you expecting your adult children to provide your care? Usually the answer is no, but guess who steps in to come to the rescue when there's a health issue? It's your adult kids. How will your care be paid? Do you have the $10,000 a month in your resources to be able to pay for live-in care if that's what you need? Where will you live if you need care? Does it make sense for you to stay at home? Or does it make sense to maybe look at different types of levels of care? And does that make sense to stay here in the Florida area or relocate up to where your kids can actually oversee your care? What conversations have you had with your family or adult kids about aging and the what ifs? Do you have your legal affairs, your living will, your healthcare, your trust accounts, your do not resuscitate? Do you have all of your affairs in order? Your end of life planned and your funeral arrangements taken care of? Don't leave that till the end for your family to have to pick up the mess and put all the funeral arrangements to take care of. That's they don't have time to grieve, because once someone passes away, then there's a whole business side of the death, and every single family member that ends up having to take care of all of that, by the time they get done with the business part of the death, everyone else has moved on, and they don't have any support system left to help them grieve. Where are your important documents, and is your family informed of what your wishes are? And are your documents up to date? So if your spouse has dementia and they are listed as your decision maker, as your power of attorney, you really want to look at that to see if they're still able to make your decisions in the event that you're not able to make your own. So an aging plan, we also talk about, these are all components of a family meeting. So this is the whole menu of what I go through, or part of a menu of what I go through with clients during the aging plan and family meeting discussion. What is working well? What is working less well? How is your family holding up? How does your family get along? And how does your family communicate? Again, remember, 85% of my clients come to me and they need family mediation. So clearly, families don't know how to communicate effectively with each other. And how would they? They're in uncharted territory. So we need to help families have better outcomes. What supports do you already have in place? Do you already have a home care company coming in? Do you have a housekeeper? What supports do you have, and what supports are needed? Where's the gaps in what you need for services to help keep you safe and healthy at home? And again, what are your goals as you age? Is it to stay at home as long as possible, or is staying at home just not feasible, and you're lonely and you're isolated and you keep falling and you're not taking your medications properly and you're losing weight? Those are indications that you either need more home care support, or you may need to move into an assisted living where you can get those services as part of your pricing package. And again, what keeps you up at night? When you try to sleep at night, what's making you toss and turn? What if you're unable to age in place at home? Where will you live if you can't remain at home? Does it make sense to move closer to one of the adult kids, into an assisted living center, or a memory care? So we help families make those decisions. We get all of that background information for families so that they can make informed decisions. What is your plan if you're the primary caregiver to a spouse and you take ill? What is your plan if you and your husband require different levels of care? You don't want to end up separated, usually, with one spouse in one facility and your remaining spouse, in a facility 30 miles away. So if you don't want that to happen, you have to put a plan together. There's pros and cons of living with adult kids. That is a whole nother webinar, but just know that if you make those kind of knee-jerk reactions because you have to make big decisions quickly when you're in a crisis, that's who comes to me, is crisis families. Just know that you need to be having frank conversations about, how is this going to work? What is our exit strategy? If our house starts looking or smelling like a nursing home, or your incontinence becomes an issue, or you start falling, or you get your days and nights mixed up, or your adult children feel like they don't have enough privacy, or your grandchildren feel like they can't be kids and run around the house and yell and scream and have fun, those things are the triggers that people call me about, because they're like, we have no privacy anymore, and we have to keep taking time off work because there's just too many care needs. Mom keeps falling, she can't stay by herself. So there's a lot of pros and cons with living in adult kids. It can work if you have enough supports in place and if you actually communicate properly as a family. So again, who will provide your care? Is it going to be professionals? Is it going to be your family, or a combination? How will your care be paid? Do you have long-term care insurance? You're going to pay out of pocket? You're going to look at a reverse mortgage? Are you a veteran and maybe can benefit from VA benefits? And where will you receive your care? At home, in a facility, at your kid's house? And explore options based on what your financial resources are. So if you have $50,000 to your name, you have very limited options versus someone who's got, $200,000 to their name, or $1 million. An aging plan, again, in the grab and go binder, this is just kind of a down and dirty checklist of just some very basic things. There's over 100 things that we have in the actual grab and go binder, but this is a down and dirty list. Your estate documents, your living will, your power of attorney, your trust documents, your code status, end of life wishes. Do you want to be resuscitated or no? Your insurance policies, dust those off and find out what the coverage actually is, and who do you call if you need to activate your insurance policy, or your kids need to. You should have copies of your insurance cards front and back. Accounts and passwords, anything that you have an account or a password for, whether it's Amazon, your iPhone, your Marriott points, anything that you have an account or a password for needs to be in your version of your grab and go binder. Your banking information. I talk to a lot of bankers, and they say literally every single day before COVID, they'd have 50 adult children coming in each week with like, mom's in the hospital or dad has dementia. We're trying to get their bills squared away. Are they a client of yours? So get your stuff in order so that your kids don't have to waste their time and energy trying to clean this mess up if you can have it done ahead of time. Your bank box key. Where is the bank box? Where's the bank box key? And do your kids know about this? And what professionals do you work with? Do your kids know the CPA, the attorney, the financial planner, the home care company that you might be using, the landscapers, the handyman? Like, who do you have on your team that you call when you need certain things done? Your medications and your medical history. Usually kids find out what all that part is when you're in the crisis, and when you're in the hospital and the family and the doctor's like, well, what are their medications? And you're like, I have no idea. We don't talk about stuff like this. Funeral arrangements. I can't tell you enough, like how hard that is for an adult kid when they're grieving you because you just died. And now they have to like plan your funeral, and well, what would mom want? And does she even want to be buried or cremated? Or like, families are not talking about this stuff. So that's what we do. We open the doors and communicate about this. Your phone password, I put that with an exclamation mark, because nearly 100% of my clients are like, oh, they think they have everything in order because they have their living will, or they have a financial planner, or they have long-term care insurance. And I'm like, really? What's your dad's phone password? Oh, I have no idea. So don't forget the phone password. We have about 8 minutes left. I'm good if you're good still. I want to just run through a quick case study. I always call Ethel and Marvin because those are my favorite names. So Ethel and Marvin, because I've been in long-term care a long time, and those were really common names back when I first started. So we got Ethel and Marvin, their mom and dad, okay? They're both 85 years old. They've been married for 65 years. You have 3 kids in 3 different states. So just think about this as a situation that families find themselves in. Of those 3 kids, one is estranged. They don't have any relationship or communication with each other. One is the caregiver. One of your kids is the caregiver to your husband, to her husband, who had a major stroke. Daughter Sally lives a flight away and flies down multiple times a year due to medical issues with her parents. All travel expenses are paid from her own account. Her husband and her employer are losing patience with her time away. She has no vacation days left. This is a typical family that comes to me. Ethel has breast cancer and is a caregiver to Marvin, who has mid-stage dementia, which means, because a lot of families don't know what that means he's wandering, he's not sleeping at night, he's getting aggressive, so combative and paranoid. She is supposed to have surgery, but she keeps putting it off because she is his primary caregiver. How would you handle this family situation? Who would you bring on the care team? And what if this was your family? So if this is your family structure, how are you managing this so that when that crisis happens, it doesn't become incredibly overwhelming for everybody if we have some of the stuff at least talked about already? How to make a legitimate referral. I know that most of the people on this webinar are probably people that are living at home, but again, I just can't stress enough about how an aging plan is critical. We have to incorporate professionals and specialists into the lives of our seniors so that they can have the best possible outcomes. Clients who work with professionals who use a collaborative approach have much better outcomes because it takes a team. Just like it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a team to have an aging loved one and have them have a safe outcome. All right. So today, hopefully your insightful learnings were the importance of having conversations with your adult kids about how things are really going for you at home. Honey, I think, you think I'm falling once a week. I'm actually falling every day. I've lost 10 pounds. I'm home life is getting hard for me. I need more help and I need more care. There's no shame in saying I need help. It's okay to humble yourself and ask for help from your kids or from the church. If you don't have a family that you can trust or your family dynamics are a little dicey, reach out to any of us at the church or friends or family that you do have a relationship with, and we will make sure that you have enough supports in place. But one of the takeaways is really looking at your life. How is it going for you at home? What keeps you up at night? And what do you need to have the most safest home environment possible so that you're getting enough to eat, you're getting to your doctor's appointments, you're getting your medications, and that you feel like you have the best quality of life that you possibly can have. So those are very basic pieces of the aging plan. Everyone needs to have an aging plan because it's just a matter of time before a fall happens or a stroke or a medical crisis, and your kids are going to be left in the dark with what are your wishes and where are documents that they need to have to produce to the hospital. So we really want to open the doors of conversation to ease the discomfort of talking about these topics that most families truly don't want to talk about. And it's hard to have your own family meeting because you don't have enough information to really know how to have a family meeting in the first place. If you think Medicare is going to pay for everything, then it's impossible for you to put your own aging plan in place because you're not making informed decisions. So my contact information is here. We've already got the website also posted as well. So if you have further questions, feel free to reach out. We're all available for you because we care about you.
Annalee Kruger, this was a phenomenal gift that you have given, not just to our senior adults, but to all of us who are or will be caring for them in ways that are tangible. Thank you so much. For all of you that will be watching this program in the days and weeks ahead, we're certainly grateful to you for your participation. And we hope that you'll attend future events and that you will also invite your friends, family, and neighbors to do so as well, whether they live in Southwest Florida or on the other side of the earth, because all of our virtual programs are currently available without any cost without any formal required registration. They're available on the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month from 11 to 12 noon Eastern Time throughout all of 2021. Our programs are also available on demand, as you have realized, by going to our website and clicking on events, then click on the on demand tab, where you can access programs all the way back to August of 2020 and as far into the future as we are able. Prudently and safely, we are beginning to offer select in-person programs at our location at the Peace Lutheran Church, 15840 McGregor Boulevard in Fort Myers. That's 33908. Now, our upcoming next virtual Wednesday program will be 2 weeks from today on April 28th. We're going to have as our guest Dr. Joseph Magnet of Vein Specialists in Fort Myers. Dr. Magnet is going to do a presentation on Find Relief and Love Your Legs Again. And I think you might enjoy his even as much as you've enjoyed Annalee today. Dr. Magnet is a wonderful individual, very capable physician, and is helping hundreds of people every month here in Southwest Florida. Again, that is Wednesday, April 28th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, a 1-hour program. Well, again, thank you for your participation today. Be sure to sign up for our email distribution list. You can do that on our enrichseniorcenter.com website. That way we can keep you informed and provide you with our monthly newsletter that Dina develops and sends to all of us. Annalee, your presentation was so practical, so helpful, but it was also motivational. I thought I had my act together, but I have a new list to improve my readiness for the future, unless you'd like to adopt me as your father, in which case I'd be happy to go ahead with that. So everyone, be safe, be well, and we hope to see you at our next virtual Wednesday program in 2 weeks, but we have in-person programs and other video programs available in the meantime. So always visit the enrichseniorcenter.com website and keep up with the growing number of programs we're trying our best to deliver to enrich your life. Have a good day, and God be with you all.